This video is sponsored by Dev Mountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, Dev Mountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time position in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. Hey guys, so I'm often asked which VS Code extensions I use and what do I recommend. So I wanted to do a video giving you 15 different extensions that I use or I have used that's really helped my workflow in front-end web development. So we're going to go through each extension. I don't just want to spout them off, but I'm going to show you each one, show you how it works, what it does, some of the settings, and so on. All right, so I have an empty folder here called sample app, so if we need to create any files to kind of demonstrate stuff, we'll go ahead and do that here. Now the first extension that I want to talk about is Live Server, which is really popular. I know a lot of you guys use this. I use it in my videos all the time, and this gives us a little dev server to run anything we want on, any small HTML website, so you don't have to install any third-party server or tool or anything. You can run it right from VS Code. And one of the best things about it is it has auto reload or live reload. So when you save a file, whether it's HTML, CSS, JavaScript, it'll auto reload the page for you. All right, so the way that this works is we need to create an HTML file. I'm actually going to create a folder called dist. And inside here, I'm going to create index.html. And we'll go ahead and just generate some boilerplate. And for the title, we'll just say sample app, and then we'll put an H1 here. We'll say sample app. All right, so I'll save that, and instead of going and opening up index.html on our file system, we can simply right click and we can say open with Live Server, and it will immediately open in a browser. And you can see it opens on our loopback address on our local host, so 127.0.0.1, and then port 5500 by default, which you can change in the settings. So you can change that, you can change the paths and things like that, but I usually just leave the defaults. So to change something, obviously we'll just put a 1 in here and we'll save, and if we go back, you'll see that it reloads automatically, so I don't have to keep hitting the refresh button, which is great for tutorials and courses and stuff like that. So that's Live Server. Next one I want to look at is the Live Sas Compiler, and this is obviously used to compile Sas, which is a CSS preprocessor. And a lot of times you may have seen me use Node Sas, and that's because not everybody uses VS Code. However, on my dev machine, this is always what I use because it's built in, it's fast, it works really well. So I'll just show you how this works, but before I do that, there's some settings that I have that pertain to this extension. So I'm just going to search for Sas in my settings, and then Live Sas Compiler, and then edit in settings.json. So these settings are what I want you to look at. So we have this settings.formats, which is an array of objects, and inside this object I have format to compressed. What this will do is it will compress the compiled CSS files, so it'll minify them so that you can save on file size. You can also do expanded, where if you don't want it to be compressed. And then the extension name, since it's minified, I have it .min.css, and then the save path I have dist/css, because usually when I'm creating something like a small application with vanilla JavaScript or a theme or something like that, I'll have a dist folder with my HTML, compiled CSS, and JavaScript. All right, and then this right here, I have generate map set to false, because by default it will create a source map, which I usually don't use or need, so I set that to false. All right, so those are my settings. Now let's see how it works. So outside of the dist folder, I'm going to create SCSS folder, and we'll create in here a main.scss file, which is a Sas file, and let's just do we'll set a color to red, and let's set the body to let's do background, set it to that color. All right, so we have our Sas. If I save, nothing's going to happen because it's not currently running. So down here you can see we have a button that says watch Sas. I'm going to click that, and our output will open here, and you can see that it's now watching. And if we look in the dist folder, it now has a CSS file with a folder called a CSS folder with a file called main.min.css, and it has our compiled CSS. And then we could just include that right in our HTML. So we'll put a link to css/main.min. And if I save that and we go back to our browser, you can see that it's auto reloaded from live server. All right, so it's a nice little workflow. Even though we're using Sas, live server will still update because this gets compiled immediately and it fires off that reload. So if I go ahead and I change this color to, let's say, gray, and save and go back, you can see that it updates right away. And by the way, if you want to stop live server, you can go down here where it says port 5500 and click that, or you can right click and say stop live server, or you can use the keyboard shortcuts. All right, so it's a nice little workflow, especially for smaller projects, static websites and stuff like that. So that is live Sas Compiler. The next one that I want to show you is HTML and CSS support. And the main reason I use this is for class and ID attribute completion. So if we go into our Sas file, or whether it's Sas or regular CSS, and we put a class like, let's say, large, and we'll set the font size to, let's say, 4 rem, and I go back to my HTML, and then let's say for this H1 here I want to add a class, and then I just type in L, you'll see that that class will actually pop up, that large class. So this is really helpful if you have a lot of classes and you want to drop down with them all. Now notice that I have these bootstrap classes in here as well. So the reason for that is because if I go to my, let's go to my settings here. What am I doing? I guess I can do it this. I just want to go to my custom settings file and just show you that right here I have the css.remote style sheets, and I have the bootstrap CDN in there. So it'll look at that file and it will pull the classes from that and put them in the drop down. And if you want to use something like Bulma or Materialize or some other framework, you can just put that right in here and you'll get those classes in a drop down. All right, so it's pretty just simple extension, but I find it pretty helpful. You know, if you want to add a display class from Bootstrap, you can just get these drop downs, buttons, and things like that. All right, so that's that. Next one I want to show you is the auto rename tag extension, which is another very simple one, but very helpful. So let's say this H1 right here, I want to change it to an H3. You'll notice if I go to the beginning tag and I go ahead and remove it, the ending tag, the 1 also gets removed, and I can change it to H3, to H2, so it'll just auto rename the ending tag along with the beginning tag, which can be helpful and speed things up. All right, so really, really simple. Next one that I want to show you is Prettier, which is pretty popular. And this is a code formatter, and it works for HTML, CSS, JavaScript, pretty much anything. And I have it set to save or format on save. And in order to do that, you need to change a setting. All right, so if I go to my settings here and I search for format on save, this will be unchecked by default. So you want to check this if you want it to format on save. And then there's all types of rules. So if we search for Prettier, you'll see different rules like, for instance, I always use single quotes. So I have, where is it? Right here, JSX single quote. So that'll always use single quotes within React or JSX. And then right here, Prettier single quote, I have that checked as well. What this will do is if any double quotes are in the file and you save, they're going to turn to single quotes. I also have semicolons turned on, so if I miss a semicolon, it'll add it automatically. If you don't use semicolons, then you want to uncheck this. All right, I use a tab width of 2. What else? We have some options for Viter too, which is another extension for Vue.js, which I'll talk about a little later. If you want trailing commas, you can do that. So there's quite a few rules in here. Now, ESLint is a pretty popular extension, which I used to use, but in all honesty, it was overkill. I didn't need it. You can set all types of rules and really customize your linting, but I didn't need it and I stopped using it. But it is a great extension, and I know that a lot of people like it. But just using Prettier on its own is enough for me. So let's create a JavaScript file to work with. So within dist, I'm going to create a folder called JS, And inside here, let's create a file called main.js. Now, if I do a variable called name and I set it to, let's do double quotes, and I set it to Brad, and I leave off the semicolon, and also let's just push it way over here, and I save, you'll see that it formats on its own. It goes back to its place, double quotes turn to single, and it adds the semicolon. All right, so I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Even in HTML, if we have this way over here and I save, it'll go right back to its place. CSS, same thing. Even if we're using Sas, go like that, save, puts it right back in its place. So you can focus more on your code and your logic other than your indents and stuff like that. All right, and if I put like, let's do function name, and let's do like console log and test. If I save that, it will go ahead and format that as well. Put everything where it's supposed to be. So pretty helpful. So the next one, while we're talking about JavaScript, the next one I want to look at is JavaScript ES6 code snippets. Now you can create custom snippets. I actually have a video showing you how to do that. But this gives you all the just basic JavaScript stuff, all the latest things like arrow functions. There's snippets for destructuring, stuff like that, console logging. So if we go to our main.js, let's say I want to do a console log, I can just do CLG, enter, and I can go ahead and put quotes, and then I can start to type, and it will replace that object text. So we'll say hello. All right, if I want to do a console error, I could do CER, and we could just do error. If I want to do, let's say a named function, I can do NFN, and it will give me an arrow function. So from here, it's going to highlight the function name. So I'll call this add. If I hit tab, it takes me right to the params. So I can immediately just add in my parameters if I have any. And then if I hit tab again, it takes me into the function body. So let's do a console log. Actually, I don't know, that didn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work at first. Like you see now it works, but sometimes it is a little finicky. But let's go ahead and just console log num1 plus num2. And then down here we can just call it. And Prettier will also add spaces. So if I do like that and I save, it automatically puts that space in here. So we can also do things like for each loops. So if I have an array of numbers, and Prettier, if I save, we'll put spaces in between there, make it nice and neat. And if I want to do a for each loop, I can do FRE, enter, and just replace this with array, hit tab, takes me to the parameter, which I'll call num. And then down here, I'll just get rid of these and do a console log. Get rid of the semicolon though. And then in here, just console log num. All right, so it can come in handy, and it can really speed up your JavaScript coding. The next one I want to show you is Turbo Console Log. All right, so this, I haven't used this recently, but I have used it in the past. This gives you really fast console logging and is helpful for debugging. So for instance, if I want to console log this variable, I can just highlight it, and I can just do a Control Alt or Control Option on a Mac, and then L, and right below it'll give me a console log of the value, the name of the variable, and then a prefix. Now it's usually TCL by default, but in my settings, if I go to my settings and I search for Turbo, right here, Turbo Console Log, you can see I've logged output. So we could put whatever here. We can just say, we can put like output in all caps, and if I get rid of this, and I do that again, so I'll do Control Option L, and now you'll see it does output. And let's say I want to do a parameter of a function, so if I highlight that and I do it, it'll give me the value. It'll also give me the name of the function so that we know what scope this is from. Okay, if I want to do the array, I can do that. Now what's nice is if you want to comment all of these logs out at the same time, you can do that by doing Alt Shift or Option Shift on a Mac, and then C, and you can see I can comment everything out. If I do that Option Shift U, it'll uncomment, so I can quickly comment, and uncomment, and then when I'm done with all this, if I'm done debugging or whatever, I can do Option Shift D and it will delete all of them at the same time. All right, so it can be pretty helpful when you're looking for errors, when you're trying to find out values of certain variables and stuff like that. All right, so that's Turbo Console Log. So the next one is a really simple extension, and that is Indent Rainbow. So this will just kind of you know, make your, as it says, make your indents more readable. It'll add a shade here or a color of your choice. So you can see right here where we're indented. You can see this dark space here. If we go to the HTML, all this space here, this is coming from that extension. And you can change the colors if you want. So if we go down here, you can see this option right here. You can add colors if you want to change that to match your theme or whatever. And it just clearly shows you where your indents are. Really helpful with like Python and Ruby and languages that really depend on indentation. So might be something you want to look into. The next one is Bracket Pair Colorizer, which does just that. It colorizes your brackets, your curly braces, your parentheses, and I'll just give you an example. So if I didn't have that extension, these would be white right here, these curly braces. But I'm going to go inside here and do an if, and notice that now these ones are purple, and it just visually organizes your blocks so that you don't get confused of what goes where. I mean, especially for beginners, how many times have you not known, you know, what curly brace goes with what? So inside here, if we wanted to do like a for loop, now you'll see they're blue, and it's going to alternate between these three colors. If I do another block in here, it's going to start over with the yellow. Okay, and you can easily change these colors within the settings if you want them to match your theme or whatever. All right, so I've been using that for quite a long time. So the next one is, where is it? Code Spell Checker. So this can be helpful because a lot of times we can run into errors because we misspelled a variable or something like that. So let's say we want this to be add value. If we mistakenly put an L in here, you'll see it'll give us this little linting error, and it says unknown word value. And it works pretty well because, for instance, this ARR, this isn't a real word, but it doesn't give us that green underline because it's not a clearly misspelled word. All right, like if I have an additional D on add, well, it doesn't even do it for that. So it doesn't do it for everything. It's just if it's a clear misspelling, okay, like that, if I have 3 R's in error. And I think it does that because you don't want these false misspellings if they're not really misspelled, because obviously in programming not everything is a true word that's in the dictionary, but it can be helpful. So I figured I'd mention that as well. All right, now the next one is a really cool extension that I recently started using, and that's REST Client. Okay, a lot of times, even as a front-end developer, you're working with back-end APIs, you're working with JSON APIs, and a lot of times you need to test your endpoints. You need to write your front-end code to revolve around your back-end server, your back-end API. So this allows us to actually make HTTP requests right from VS Code. So it works sort of like Postman, which is an HTTP client. So let me just show you how this works. What we would do is in our project, we'll create a folder in the root called requests. Of course, you could call it whatever you want. And I'm going to create a file called api.http. And from here, we can make HTTP requests. So I'm going to use the JSON placeholder fake REST API as an example, but of course you could use any API. And we're going to say get, because we want to make a get request. And immediately you see the send request button. Okay, but we want to put a URL here, so I'm going to do HTTPS, and we want to do JSON placeholder.typecode.com/posts. All right, so just by doing this, if I hit this send request, it'll open up another tab here, and it gives me all the headers, and it gives me the data that's sent back, which is all these posts. All right, so this is just a fantastic extension when you're dealing with a back end and you want to test your endpoints. You want to see exactly what data you're getting back so you can incorporate that into your UI. And if I want to make another request, I can just go down here and I can put in triple number signs here and do, let's make a post request this time to the same URL. Now, since we're making a post request, we want to send data, so we're going to add in for the headers, we're going to add in a content type. We even get a drop down of application JSON, and then we can go ahead and put some curly braces in here and the data we want to send. So let's send a title. So we'll send a title of my post, and let's do a body, and we'll just say this is my post, and we'll go ahead and send this request. We get our headers, and then we get our response data, which is the title and body we sent, along with an ID that was sent from the back end. So this is a really, really cool extension. I've used Postman for a long time. It's a great piece of software, but recently I've been using this to kind of test my endpoints and stuff. All right, it's great for full stack development, obviously, as well. All right, so that is REST client. The next one I'm going to show you is GetLens. Actually, let's close that up. And if we go right here, so GetLens, supercharge your Git capabilities into VS Code. And what this does is it does just that. It gives you a lens into your Git repository. Usually you just have this hidden .git file and you can't really see what's going on. And this does that. It shows you your branches, your contributors, it shows you a whole bunch of stuff, and it even prints it out within the code who updated what and when. So to give you an example, and also you get this icon over here where it shows you everything. Now I need to actually initialize a repository, so I'm going to go ahead and go into my terminal here and say git init, and you can also use your built-in VS Code git, but I don't really use that too much. So I'm just going to do git init, and let's do git add all and git commit, and we'll just say initial commit. All right, so now if I go to, I'm actually going to close the JavaScript file and go back in, and now on each line that I go on, you'll see it'll show who updated it, when, and it'll show you the message, the commit message. Okay, so you know exactly who does what. This is great for when you're working with a team. That's where it really shines, is so you know who did what. Now, if I add something here, like let's just, we'll add a person, just say name equals Brad, and let's save that. And see that it says uncommitted changes. So it'll tell me actually what code has not been committed. All right, and if I want to make a commit, I can open up the Git Lens. Now, I don't think you can actually make commits from here, but you can stage your changes. So if I go, let's see, main.js. Actually, I want to show you uncommitted changes. So right here, it'll actually show me what has been committed and what hasn't. So this right here hasn't been committed yet. So we can go ahead and stage our changes from here, and then we could either commit from the terminal, or you can use your built-in Git right here and just go ahead and hit the check. Commit message, we'll say added name, and now that's been committed. And if I go to my main.js, you'll see that it says that we made a commit a few seconds ago, and it has the comment of added name. All right, so pretty helpful if you're, working on a team, and if you want to take a look inside your repository, you can see all your branches will be listed out here. Obviously, we only have a master. All your contributors will be here. So it's pretty cool, and it's definitely something that I've started to work with on larger projects. I don't think it's necessary for little small projects, but it's great for large ones, especially if you have other developers. All right, so that is GetLens. The next one that I want to look at is a really simple one, but pretty useful, just like most of these, and that is the where is it? Auto Markdown Preview. All right, so this is great for documentation when you have Markdown files. When you push to GitHub, your README Markdown file is gonna show in the repository homepage. So if I go to my directory here, my root, and create a file called readme.md, so we'll create a Markdown file, and right away you'll see on the side here a preview opens. So let's say I wanted to add a title like my app, and I have a crash course on Markdown if you're interested in that. Let's go ahead and just say this is my doc for my app, and maybe we'll have like usage and then triple backticks, and then we can put our code in here, our command, so npm install. So it just shows you what it's going to look like, which is nice. So something I've been using for quite a while. Actually, yeah, let's just save that. So I'm actually structuring this as I would a real application or a real website. So the next one that I want to show you is one that I use all the time when I use React, and that is ES7. Whoops, I don't want to open this over here. So it's ES7 React Redux GraphQL React Native Snippets. I know that's a mouthful, but this is really, really helpful when you're coding React, because it allows you to generate full components, whether they're class-based or functional. Where is it? So if we go down here, you can generate, class-based components, arrow functions, regular functions, and then it even has like console logs and stuff like that. Some of these are the same as the other extension I showed you, like CLG, CER. So if you just want snippets for console logs and you use React, you don't even need the other JavaScript snippets extension. One thing I really like about this is prop types. I hate typing out prop types in React, so here we can just simply do PT and then whatever that type, and if it's required, we just add an R onto it. In fact, in my MERN-STAT course, we'll be using this quite a bit, the one that I'm updating now. We can also do exports and imports, and it comes in handy with React. So I'm not going to give an example for it just because I don't have a React application open, but it's really helpful. And then for Vue.js, I use this Viter, I think that's how you say it, but this gives you really nice syntax highlighting, snippets, IntelliSense, linting. It allows you to use Emmet within Vue templates. I would not use Vue.js without using this in VS Code. All right, but that's it. Those are the 15 extensions. If you're an Angular developer, I would suggest the Angular 7 Snippets right here by John Papa. So that's what I use for Angular. I figured I'd mention that since I mentioned React and Vue. But that's it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully you found some of these useful or will find some of these useful. But that's it. Thanks for watching.